entertained? Are you not entertained?
Jamie Lloyd. Nah. Colt of Thorn. Nah. Silver Shamrock. Nah. Reboot. Nah. Pick up where we left off in 81. Aha. Halloween H20, directed by Steve Miner. This is set 20 years after the original Halloween massacre of 1978. This is the return of Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode. This is the first Halloween film in the franchise, besides Halloween 3, to not include Dr. Sam Loomis. This movie, we catch up with a grief and trauma-stricken Laurie Strode as she struggles to deal with her trauma. And she now has a son, and she is a head teacher at the Hillcrest Academy. Michael Myers is loose, and he is stalking Laurie once again. That is basically an overview of Halloween H20. Guys, we are about halfway, I would say, through the Halloween franchise. Now, if you're new here, hi, I'm Maximus Cardillo. We are reviewing the entire Halloween franchise, as we are exactly 6 months away from spooky season. What better way to get excited for Halloween than to review all of the Boogeyman's movies? Let's get into it. The pros, the cons, because this is a very polarizing movie. I feel like there is battle lines drawn. The original Halloween purists, the fans from the early days of the franchise, they dislike this movie. They dislike it for the change in setting. They dislike it for the score. And then the positives are that it was a return to form for the franchise. They got rid of the Cult of Thorn, they got rid of all the hokiness, and they took it back to basics. Michael Myers is the brother to Laurie Strode. They kept that in, and he is just stalking and killing back like it used to be in the good old days of the Halloween franchise. This movie kicks off with Nurse Marion from 1978, and it is in Langdon, Illinois, not Haddonfield. None of this movie takes place in Haddonfield. It is the first time that Michael Myers has stalked elsewhere. Am I right? Check me down below if I'm wrong. But, yeah. So we get Nurse Marion. She winds up getting and we get a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who it's a cool little fake out in the beginning when we're first introduced to his character. He's wearing a hockey mask, paying homage to Jason Voorhees because the director, Steve Miner, directed some of the parts in the Friday the 13th franchise. Right off the bat, I think the vibes are on point. I think the Halloween atmosphere is returned to form. It is very atmospheric, it's very spooky. It opens with the Mr. Sandman song from Halloween 2, 1981. And yeah, we get that awesome voiceover from a voice actor. It wasn't Donald Pleasance because sadly he passed by this time. But yeah, we get a voiceover by this actor, and it's basically an exposition dump showing us where we are in the timeline, as this film did choose to ignore everything after Halloween 2. So it has a lot of work for it. I mean, some people I think are still confused, that they think Laurie Strode left Jamie Lloyd in Haddonfield and went and had a son and moved to the Hillcrest and became the teacher there. But yeah, I mean, moving to California I think was a good idea, because if Laurie Strode faked her death and she's out and about, it wouldn't make any sense if she was still in Haddonfield. I think the change of scenery works for the movie. I think that it does have a summer atmosphere. It does. I mean, they do show some Halloween decorations and kids dressed up and everything to try and make up for that fall atmosphere and vibe, because we're no longer in a Midwest suburban area. It's hit or miss for some people. For me, it doesn't bother me that bad, because I think the suspense is so well crafted in this movie. I just spoke on the opening sequence where Myers breaks into Nurse Marion's house. She breaks in to get the case file for Laurie Strode. He seeks her out. He then steals a car, reminiscent of 1978, and he goes cross country to California to seek out his sister 20 years later. This time around, we got more of an orchestral score. John Carpenter's original score was very synth-based and very minimalist. This goes above and beyond, and it really seems to be a product of the time. I am honestly a fan of the H20 theme. I don't hate it or anything. I obviously prefer the original John Carpenter synth score, but this orchestral take isn't bad. But there is times where I feel like if they just would have taken the music from the first Halloween and Halloween 2 and just inserted it here, it would have worked even better than the orchestral stuff. It sounds a little bit too grandiose for a Michael Myers outing, you know what I mean? I don't know. I think the orchestra, it's very Psycho inspired. And speaking of Psycho, there is a lot of Psycho references in H20. As you probably know, if not, here you go. Jamie Lee Curtis's mother was actually the star in the original Alfred Hitchcock Psycho film. And she makes a cameo in this movie alongside her daughter. She's the secretary to Laurie Strode. And yeah, there is references all over the place to Psycho. LL Cool J is in this movie. He calls Laurie a psycho in this film, and it's a pretty on-the-nose Easter egg for Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. But yeah, let's get into the characters. Josh Hartnett as Laurie Strode's son. I think he does a very good job to combat Laurie Strode in this movie. Josh Hartnett and Jamie Lee Curtis, they bounce off of each other so well. There is a specific scene that I want to draw your attention to. It is when Josh Hartnett's character leaves campus and he goes into town, and his mother catches him off campus. And they kind of lose their shit on each other. And it's a very human scene. It's very... I want to say that it's very relatable. You know, you always have those butting of head moments with family members, and I think it was done very well here. I think H20 does a great job of humanizing Laurie Strode. As to where the David Gordon Green trilogy makes her an over-the-top doomsday prepper because of her trauma, in H20, she is more human, yes. She isn't that over-the-top caricature of a trauma-stricken lead character in a movie, you know what I mean? I hope what I'm trying to say is coming across well. She's a little bit of an alcoholic, she's imperfect, and she's likable. I mean, we're catching up with Laurie Strode for the first time since 81. It's the first time that Jamie Lee came back to the franchise. It was kind of a big deal at the time. This movie was originally going to go to VOD, video on demand, and it wasn't going to get a theatrical release, but then when Jamie Lee got involved, that is when they decided this is getting a theatrical release. I also touched on it earlier that this is the first Halloween film without Dr. Loomis. Now, his presence is felt in the beginning in Nurse Marion's office. There's a picture of him, and then there's that voiceover, and then we're looking at all the evidence and the case files and everything in that beginning, that awesome beginning opening montage. And yeah, I think that this movie, it does a very good job with the absence of Loomis. All that weight, it falls on Jamie Lee Curtis, and there's nobody better to carry this film, because truly, it is a Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode film. Michael isn't really predominant in this movie as he is in other Halloween movies. It is really a Laurie Strode movie. I mean, we get that opening sequence where he is killing the neighbor kid and he's killing Nurse Marion. And yeah, then it skips to the Hillcrest Academy and we linger around with the kids and everything. Now, I'm not saying that the pacing is bad in this movie. As a matter of fact, the pacing is awesome in this movie. I love that it is... I think this movie is only like... What is it? Let's see. It's only like an hour and... Yeah, it's 86 minutes. So it is one of the shortest Halloween movies in the franchise. And I think that works to the benefit of this movie. Because you get the opening, you meet the characters, you establish that we are building towards a Laurie Strode versus Michael Myers final confrontation. And then... boom, before you know it, we're in the third act and we're getting that confrontation that they promised us in the beginning of the film. So I think the pacing is done brilliantly. I think there could have been a little bit more kills, but the one kill that sticks out in my mind is when all the kids who stayed back and didn't go to Yosemite, and it's with that elevator, that small little elevator. It's when that elevator gets dropped on this chick's leg and it basically takes her leg clean off and it's just limp, and she's crawling away from Myers, and Myers eventually inevitably kills her and then hangs her up like a Christmas decoration. She's got lights strung all around her, she's dripping blood, and that image, it's burned in my brain after watching this movie today. I think it's a very good scene. I think, like I said earlier, all the suspense in this movie is done very well. I think I've been naming a lot of pros to this movie. Let's get into some of the cons. Cons of this movie: the Myers mask, okay? There is like 4 different Myers masks in H20, and they all suck for the most part. There's like one decent mask, but all of the masks have the eye holes cut out way too wide and you can see Myers' eyes. In the whole movie, he's like this, and it just looks horrible. It defeats the purpose. It makes him look cartoonish or silly. It doesn't, make me fear him. I like when the eyes are blackened out in that kind of stylistic lighting with the devil eyes. That's the whole thing with Myers, the devil eyes, the absence of humanity. And when you see his eyes so blatantly obvious through the eye holes in these masks in this movie H20, it just takes you out of it, you know what I mean? He's no longer just a shape, he's just kind of a guy in a Halloween mask, which is inevitably what he is, but you know what I mean. Besides the mask problem, I think LL Cool J gets kind of annoying at some of these parts where he's an aspiring writer and he's writing basically porn, and he's reading it to his wife or whoever, his sugar mama, on the phone. That gets kind of annoying. It kind of just seems like comedy for the sake of comedy, shoehorned in. But besides that, I don't have too many problems with this movie. It is like a swan song to the Halloween franchise. It brings it back to form, and it is just a fun watch. I mean, there's no Cult of Thorn bullshit. There's nothing that's too convoluted. I mean, once you understand that this is a direct sequel to Halloween 2, and there's no other things you have to worry about. It's just Michael Myers' sister versus Michael Myers, blood versus blood. I mean, that's one of the taglines of this movie, blood is thicker than water. They really leaned into that sibling dynamic, to that final battle that we got. And it is arguably the best final battle between Laurie Strode and Michael Myers to date. I mean, besides that, it has to go between that and the Halloween Ends battle, but I think I'd have to give that to H20. This battle was drawn out, You get Myers incapacitated on the gurney, and then Laurie Strode steals one of the police officers' gun, tells them to load him in, and she takes the ambulance for a ride. Inevitably, at the end of this movie, we all know it, she cuts Myers' head clean off in one of the most satisfying moments in the franchise. Now, that is something H20 has going for it. It has many iconic moments in the franchise, like the one I just said where Michael's decapitated, and then there's that face-to-face Laurie Strode and Michael Myers for the first time in 20 years when they're meeting face-to-face, and then there's that door, nothing but the door in between them, and you get that shot through the circular window. It's just some iconic stuff, guys. And the orchestral music, it kind of dampers the mood, but they did it right at the end of this movie. When Michael gets his head chopped off, it is the John Carpenter score that they play. So the whole movie they're playing this other rendition, and then finally at the end you get the John Carpenter soundbite and the John Carpenter score to bring it home. Guys, I enjoy Halloween H20. I'm not one of those Halloween purists that thinks that setting it in California makes it suck, that the orchestral score ruins it, that Laurie Strode, abandoning Haddonfield and faking her death. It is what it is. I think H20 is a return to form. You've heard me say it. I think it does a great job of building suspense naturally. It doesn't feel forced like it does in Resurrection. Resurrection is a whole other story. You just got to look at H20 as if it's its own thing, and Resurrection never happened. To some Halloween fans, H20 is the definitive end of the franchise. Let me know if that's what you think in the comments down below. I have to give this movie a solid 7 out of 10. It is Maximus Tomatoes approved. I would recommend this movie to a new Halloween fan. That's my review of Halloween H2O, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you agree with me? Do you like Halloween H2O? I know a lot of people in the fan base have a lot of nostalgia for this movie. I really don't. I kind of came in around Halloween 4. That's the first one I saw on demand and on AMC Fear Fest. But yeah, H2O, it still has a solid place in this franchise. I've been Maximus Cardillo. One question left to ask. Are you not entertained?